devastation comes to California.
Yeah, let's get out of here.
Residents flee for their lives.
There we go, there's the rush.
The ground split. The sky changed. And within 48 hours, 3 separate events happened across the United States that experts still cannot explain. 1 could be weather. 2 could be coincidence. But 5 at the same time? Something is happening, and it has happened before, exactly like this, in Scripture. This is not a theory. This is not speculation. These events are recorded, documented, witnessed by thousands of ordinary people who stepped outside expecting a normal day and found something they could not explain. The land is shifting without warning, without storms, without earthquakes to trigger it. In multiple states, the ground beneath streets and neighborhoods has simply given way, quietly, suddenly, as if something underneath had been breaking down for a long time and finally reached its limit. At the same time, the sky is doing things meteorologists are struggling to explain. Lights where there should be none, formations that don't follow wind patterns, sounds that have no source. And the water is changing too. 3 different locations, 3 different phenomena, all happening within the same narrow window of time. Scientists are offering explanations, but even the explanations raise more questions than they answer. Here is what is impossible to ignore. Every single one of these events matches a pattern described in the book of Joel, written thousands of years ago, almost point for point. Wonders in the heavens, signs on the earth, blood, fire, columns of smoke. Not 1 or 2 of those, all of them. So the question is not what is happening, the question is what it means, and whether the answer to that question changes everything. Stay with this, because what comes next is harder to dismiss than you might expect. It started without warning. No earthquake, no storm, no dramatic trigger of any kind. In multiple states across America, the ground simply opened up. Sinkholes swallowing streets whole, landslides tearing through hillsides that had stood for generations, entire sections of earth sinking slowly, taking homes, roads, and utilities down with them. Families given minutes to grab what they could and leave. That part made the news.
Tonight, the image is still coming in after that strong earthquake hit Southern California, a 5.2 magnitude quake near San Diego, warnings all the way to Los Angeles.
But here is what didn't. In most of these cases, there was no visible cause, no single event that explained why the ground failed at that moment, in that place, on that day. Experts pointed to underground water erosion, limestone dissolving slowly beneath the surface, cavities forming in the dark, unseen, undetected for years, maybe decades. The collapse didn't begin when it became visible. It began long before, hidden, silent, building pressure underneath while everything above looked perfectly normal. That is what makes this difficult to sit with, because Scripture uses this exact image, not as a metaphor for geology, as a warning about foundations, about the danger of structures that look strong on the surface while something underneath is already gone. The Bible does not describe collapse as a sudden event. It describes it as the final stage of a much longer process, one that most people never see coming because they were never looking below the surface. So when the ground fails quietly, repeatedly, across multiple states without dramatic cause, it forces a question that goes beyond soil composition and underground water tables. What else is built on a foundation that looks solid but has already been compromised? What else is one pressure point away from giving way? The ground is speaking. The question is whether anyone is listening. While the ground was giving way beneath American cities, something else was happening, something quieter, something that came not from below the earth, but from below the ocean. Along the west coast, deep-sea creatures began washing ashore, alive, uninjured, calm. These are not animals that surface naturally. They are built for darkness, for pressure so extreme that human technology struggles to reach them. They live in parts of the ocean so deep that most people will never see them in a lifetime, and yet there they were, on beaches, in shallow water, as if something beneath the surface had shifted and pushed them up. One sighting is unusual, two is remarkable, but multiple reports across multiple locations within the same narrow window of time, that is something else entirely. Scientists pointed to temperature shifts, changes in ocean currents, underwater disturbances. But even with those explanations on the table, the timing remained difficult to account for. These creatures don't migrate toward shore. They don't surface under stress. They simply appeared, as if the ocean itself had decided to reveal what it had been holding. Was meant to stay below the surface can no longer remain there. The ocean did not flood. It did not rage. It simply opened its hand. And what came out raises a question that the temperature charts and current maps cannot answer. If the sea is releasing what it once held, what else is preparing to surface? It wasn't just the ground, it wasn't just the water. The sky changed too. On a calm morning off the coast of Florida, with no storms, no clouds, no atmospheric disturbance of any kind, towering columns of light shot straight up into the sky. Yellow, purple, silent, motionless, rising like pillars from the surface of the water all the way up into the atmosphere. They lasted long enough for hundreds of people to pull out their phones, record what they were seeing, and ask each other the same question: what is that? Hours later, an official statement came. It was not an aurora, not a missile launch, not an unusual weather pattern. Radar showed nothing. No particles, no aircraft, no atmospheric explanation of any kind. The sky lit up, and science had nothing. Then came Ohio. A cross-shaped light appeared in the sky, clear, steady, silent. No storm to explain it, no lightning, no weather event of any kind. It appeared. It remained visible long enough to be recognized, and then it faded. People didn't panic. They didn't run. They stood still, watching quietly, as if some part of them already understood that what they were seeing was not random. In Texas, residents looked up to find a perfect ring of rotating clouds with a single beam of light shining through the center. Still, precise, as if drawn by hand. Meteorologists called it rare atmospheric conditions, but here is what cannot be debated: the timing. This stone did not surface during a period of calm. It did not emerge during a season of stability or normalcy. It came now. During the same window of time that the ground is collapsing, the ocean is releasing its depths, and the sky is doing things that radar cannot detect. It simply appeared, forcing questions, offering no easy answers. Not far away, in Florida, receding waters in the Everglades exposed something else entirely. A stone carved with the image of an angel sounding a trumpet. Beneath it, a short line of ancient script. Translated, it read, "Fire will rise where the sea kisses the shore." Hours after that discovery circulated online, flames appeared along the Miami Beach shoreline following an electrical malfunction. One event, unusual. Two events, remarkable. But a carved ancient warning followed within hours by the exact scene it described? Scripture is consistent on one point. What is hidden does not stay hidden forever. Buried things resurface not when they are first created, but when people are meant to see them. The earth is not just shifting, it is opening its mouth. And what it is saying has been waiting underground for a very long time. Most people were waiting for something loud, a disaster, an explosion, a dramatic sign that would be impossible to miss, something that would force everyone to stop and pay attention all at once. But that is not what came. What came was silence. Across parts of the American Midwest, residents began reporting something that was difficult to describe and even harder to dismiss. Entire areas falling completely quiet. Not peaceful quiet, not the kind of silence that follows a heavy snowfall or settles over a field at dawn. This was different. No insects, no wind moving through the trees, no distant traffic, no background noise of any kind. Just a stillness so complete that people described it as heavy, as if the air itself had weight, as if something was pressing in from all sides without touching anything. It arrived without warning. It left just as suddenly, and almost everyone who experienced it described the same feeling afterward. Not calm, not relief. Dread. A sense that something was about to happen, that the silence was not an ending, but a pause, a held breath, a moment between what was and what was coming. The book of Revelation describes a moment when heaven itself falls silent, not as a conclusion, as a prelude. Silence in Scripture is never empty. It is charged. It is the space between warning and fulfillment, between the last moment to turn and the moment that follows when turning is no longer possible. Creation is not resting. It is waiting. In the silence spreading across the Midwest is not the absence of something. It is the presence of something that has not yet shown its face. The ground gave way. The ocean released its depths. The sky displayed what radar could not explain. Ancient stones surfaced from the earth. And now everything has gone quiet. That is not the end of the pattern. That is the middle of it. The signs were not only in the sky, not only in the water, not only in the ground beneath American cities. The most unsettling sign was happening in plain sight. People had stopped trusting each other. Not suddenly, not dramatically. It happened the way the ground collapses, slowly, quietly, beneath the surface, until one day the weight became too much and everything gave way at once. Neighbors stopped speaking. Families fractured along invisible lines. Communities that once shared the same values could no longer agree on the same reality. Division became normal. Anger became the default. And somewhere in the middle of all of it, compassion quietly disappeared. This is not a political observation. It is a biblical one. Jesus did not only describe physical signs when he spoke about the end times. He described a moral condition, a social unraveling. He said people would turn against one another, that love would grow cold, not in a dramatic moment of open hatred, but through a slow fading, a gradual loss of patience, of care, of the willingness to see another person as worth protecting. When that fading becomes normal, Scripture says the pattern is already advanced. History does not lie about what comes next. Nations rarely fall from outside pressure alone. They weaken first from within. Division erodes trust. Distrust feeds fear. Fear produces conflict, and once that cycle reaches a certain speed, it becomes very difficult to slow down. The physical signs are jarring. The collapsing ground, the changing sky, the unexplained silence. But a nation that has lost its moral foundation is a sign that requires no radar equipment, no geological survey, no expert panel. It is visible to anyone paying attention, and it has been building for a long time. Step back for a moment. Look at everything that has happened, not one event at a time, all of it together. Because that is the only way to see what is actually being revealed. The ground collapsing without warning, the ocean releasing creatures from its deepest places, pillars of light appearing in skies that radar shows as empty, ancient carved stones surfacing from beneath layers of earth undisturbed for generations, rivers changing color without scientific explanation, the sky forming shapes so precise they looked deliberate, an entire nation fracturing quietly from the inside out. And now, silence. A stillness spreading across regions that feels less like calm and more like anticipation. One of those events is unusual. Two is remarkable. All of them together within the same season, that is something else entirely. The prophet Joel wrote a description thousands of years ago. He listed 5 categories of signs that would appear before a great turning point in human history. Signs in the heavens, signs on the earth, blood, fire, columns of smoke. Every single category is now represented, not across decades, not spread out over generations, within a single narrow window of time across one nation. Jesus called moments like this birth pains, not the final event, not the conclusion, the contractions that come before it, early warnings, signals that the season has changed even if the moment itself has not yet arrived. Birth pains do not stop once they begin. They intensify, they get closer together, and everyone who has ever witnessed a birth knows that once the pattern reaches a certain point, what comes next is no longer a question of if, only when. The pattern is not hidden, it is not obscure, it is laid out in plain sight for anyone willing to look at it without flinching. The question is what to do with it.